Hi there, welcome to this recording of the 11th session of the Pause Fast Forward program. Hopefully you're making a lot of progress, and just wanted to quickly remind you of kind of where we're going with this. We want to generate that extra time in your time jar, if you like, by putting rocks in first, maybe filtering out a few rocks, and then the gravel, the things we have to do afterwards, and also having a bit of a filter to gravel, working on yourself not to do this. So you generate that extra bit of time in your time jar there for more thinking. And one of the strategies is to sort of make sure these three things are in place. This TAB, think, should be the first rock in there, making sure every day we're spending some thinking time. That's really important. And then in that thinking time, we're also developing an action. Doesn't have to be done at that point, but something that's going to be done later that day or during the day that takes you one step towards any of your goals. And obviously also having a beacon for later in the day, something you're really looking forward to that's very much for you. So making sure that's become a habit, first of all. Also making sure, as we're going to be talking about a little bit later on in today's session, that you're also spending enough time thinking as teams or with people that you share goals with inside and outside of work. And also your own personal sort of values. Are you developing those? We did a couple of exercises on those in earlier sessions, and also your personal why is that developing into something that's really important to you. And also when you're taking daily actions, if you are working on a sort of personal vision, look at what the areas you're not taking actions towards, and maybe filter those out, change it, simplify it, create a more simplified version of these sort of Olympic rings. So quick question for you to ask yourself. I'm going to be revealing the answer in this video fairly soon, but just think about this question in terms of, this was a study done in 2018, pre-COVID, looking at sort of the average amount of time the average UK office worker was fully engaged with their job in a day. So fully engaged, not being distracted, fully in the moment, doing the work that they're primarily doing. And so when you think about what that might be, you think on average back in 2018, it might have changed a little bit since then, but not that much. And the answer is actually less than 3 hours, which is going to be sort of more or less depending on your role, etc. Depending on, you might feel that's a low number or a high number indeed. What it represents is there's a big opportunity there to do more and less, to be more engaged, and to actually think about how many hours a day you really are fully engaged in the job. So a couple of interesting things to share with you. This is a World War I munitions factory, and they obviously, when they started the working, they worked 7 days a week. So it was massively important to produce lots of munitions, but they found this wasn't really sustainable. People were getting ill, etc. And so they decided to reduce the number of days to six days a week rather than 7 days a week to make it more sustainable. And again, when you think to yourself, how much less production over that 7 days they had before did they make in 6 days? And the answer is none. They actually improved the output by moving to 6 days. So it's interesting study there. And you've also seen companies successfully move to a 4-day week from 5-day week without seeing any decrease in productivity. If you think about what happened during the COVID pandemic, when people had to change very rapidly, again, a lot of productivity sort of went up in that period, and it also happened really, really fast. That's an interesting thing to look at. Parts of the sort of Virgin company have been at points had times where they've been able to, I think they still do, are able to take unlimited holidays. As long as they produce their output. Again, that's not showing a drop in productivity. So I'm not particularly advocating sort of going to a 4-day week or giving people unlimited holidays, etc. Partly because actually, you think about the customers that your team serves, that's not necessarily going to suit them. It might create a skepticism with them, saying, well, if you can do it in 4 days, why are you charging so much, etc. And also, very importantly, from an engagement perspective, it's you can also create a bit of sort of jealousy with for the people who can't, in their role, work 4 days. They have to be in 5 days. So, and it tends to be, I think, a bit of a sort of shorter term benefit on average, but that, again, that's a generalization, etc. So, but the point is, there are some opportunities to do more in less time, and it's not a very healthy thing to be spreading, say, 3 days of work over 5 days. That's just you obviously need breaks. You need things that are kind of more stimulating, more about team bonding, etc. But don't try and spread 3 days of work over 5 days, or even 4 days of work over 5 days. The second question I want you to think about is, and again, you'll have to guess this on your own. I'll be revealing the answer in a second. But which car manufacturer over the last sort of 30, 40 years has been consistently the most profitable? So some people think it's sort of Vauxhall, Audi Group, etc. But actually, it's actually one of the Japanese companies, Toyota, and not far behind, I believe, is Honda as well. And one of the things they do as part of their culture is they actually have, within their working day, of pretty much every employee, they have some Kaizen activities that are dedicated to stopping, thinking, how can I improve this role? How can I make it safer, more productive, etc. And so they actually build that into their culture, and that's why they've been the most successful car manufacturer over the last 30 to 40 years, because they get everyone involved and actually build that in. So what I'd like to do from today's session is take back a couple of questions to your team. And I'll leave it to you to how you want to phrase them. But because I wouldn't advocate going to a 4-day week or implying that's going to be the case. But it's quite an interesting question to think about in your team, is that if we did have to do all our work in 4 days rather than 5 days, the UK government actually imposed this, towards in the sort of 70s, etc. So they actually moved that. They actually went to that format. But if you had to do that, if it was imposed by the government, say, and you had to move to 4 days rather than 5 days, what would you do to make sure that you achieved the same output? It's quite an interesting question, without implying you're actually going to do it. But if you had to do it, so for whatever reasons, it's imposed or another pandemic, etc., what would you do? What would you have to do? What would you have to fix? How would you have to operate differently? How would you have to make your meetings more effective, etc.? What would you have to do that? And the second question, which is actually really important, and this is what sort of Toyota essentially do, is how would you make sure that time didn't just sort of frit away once if you're able to do your work in 4 days rather than 5? How could you, over those 5 days that you are actually still working, make sure that 5th day is allocated towards thinking time and development? How could you build in that into your systems? Would you have to allocate particular time? Would you have to set up certain process systems to make sure that you were kind of forcing yourself to do that time for development, rather than just sort of letting it be absorbed into the melee activities that you have to do anyway? So I want to ask you to take those back to your team and phrase this question how you want. But how could you do it how could you work in such a way that 4 days rather than 5 days? And how would you make sure that if you were able to take those actions over the 5 days, how could you protect that extra day's worth of time for more thinking, which I think is probably the most important activity, unsurprisingly. So I'll leave you to that back to your teams and let me know how you get on. A couple of updates on the vegetable patch. I'm having a lot of sun, so I've got a lot of green tomatoes waiting for a bit of sun to come out in the UK. Same with the butternut squash. They're not kind of developing as far as they should have, because some of them are sort of not getting there at all because of the lack of sun at the moment. But beetroot is flourishing still. A lot of that seems to be in good conditions this year for beetroot, and also you're generally sort of looking forward to some parsnips and leeks to be harvested later in the year. So that's the quick vegetable update for those interested in that. Great. So let me know how you get on, and I'll look forward to catching you in about a month's time on the 12th session of the program. Bye for now.